Good evening, everybody. My name is Baso. What I'm gonna go over today, I'm gonna go over how I assess people. Um, it's a, it's the way I assess it is basically for my clients. It's not very technical, but it gives me a general idea of where to start with. So I know a lot of people in the fitness industry go straight into working out, but like I said before in my previous videos, there's no one formula that fixes everybody, depending on your impingement, your lifestyle, how much inflammation you got going on. It all depends on the individual person. So before I train anybody, no matter what level of training you are, or no matter how conditioned or how healthy you may be, a lot of people don't work their hip flexors and their hips and their ankle mobility. So just because you may be in top shape, you can run 5 miles, you can bench 400 pounds, or you can, whatever the case is, each each person I assess each individual basis. So why I do that, so that way I can design a program specifically for each individual person. So when a client comes to me and asks, hey, I want to set up an assessment with you. So I'm going to go over briefly how I go over my assessment. So the first assessment that I do is I do a squat assessment. So I'm going to stand on the side. So what I'm looking for, how low that person can get without their heels coming off. So I'm going to do two ways. I'm going to do it going all the way down without my heels coming up, and then I'm going to do it with the heels coming up. So when the heels coming up, that gives me a sign that something's going on. Like you have lack of mobility in your hips and hip flexors, and also your ankles, one of the two, or it could be both. So what I'm about to demonstrate is called a primal squat. So eventually, this is where you want to get to as far as range of motion. And then I'll explain the reason behind it. So when I assess people, I always tell them squat as far as they can do. So typically, I have them stand about within the shoulder length and keep their feet parallel and go as far as they can go without your heels coming up. So, and typically when I tell people to squat, they go like this and they lower their back. So we're not lowering your back. You want to keep your back as straight as possible. Like I said, I'm going to demonstrate a primal squat. So good hip and ankle mobility, you should be able to squat down as low as you can. Now there's factors that play into it depending on your genetics. Yes, that plays a factor in it too. So we're just generalization, just broad. Let me look at what your range of motion, what do you have? So typically I have them squat. So this is pretty good if you can do this. So if you can squat all the way down into a primal squat, if you can touch your butt to your heel, that's perfect. If not, that's okay. So that when you can squat that low, that tells me you got good hips and ankle mobility. So now I'm going to demonstrate one with the heels coming up. And this is most of my clients that come to me. Their ankles come up. So that usually tells me they got some hips or ankle mobility issues. So I'm going to demonstrate how over 70% of my clients come to me. So this is where I need to work with them as far as mobility goes. So when they squat and they go like this, see that heel comes off the ground and they go right here. So once that heel come off the ground, that stops. So if they got to do like this to squat and that heels come up, that means there's some restrictions in the hips or hip flexors. So reason I do that is because a lot of people like just going to the gym and working out, the ones that love going to the gym. The problem is if you can't squat without your heels coming off and you go down low, and if you're trying to engage your glutes or hamstrings, you got to get below 90-degree angle to really engage your glutes. When I mean by 90, you need to get down to at least right here. So within this parameter here, you're always working quads. So it's quad dominant. Most people are quad dominant. So when you're suffering from knee pain, you don't want to always emphasize in your quads. You want to make sure you engage your glutes and hamstrings. So that's one part of my assessment to see how far you can squat. So That would lead to the next assessment, because that now tells me we have some hips or ankle mobility issue. So now I'm gonna narrow down to see if that was more ankle or a combination of ankles and hips. So on my previous video that I demonstrate ankle mobility, basically you're gonna elevate your feet like on a bench or box or something like that. And what you wanna do, you wanna lean forward as far as you can. It's called knees over toes without your heels coming up. So I'm gonna demonstrate a good range of motion, and I'm demonstrate a bad one. So a good one will be something like this. See how my ankles are not coming up? My knees are several inches past my toes. That's good range of motion. That means when that first demonstration I did and the second demonstration now, that shows me I don't have any impingement in my hips and also ankle. But the second one I demonstrated where my ankles came up, that means that I have some kind of impingement. So if I do this demonstration and I go right here, that means I got some stiffness in my ankle. So that tells me that you're going to have some issues in your ankles and your hips. But if you're able to go a little bit past your toes on this one, that means to me, I need to work more on your hips. So if you can't move at all, we got issues. So this is not good when it's perfectly like this. You can't go forward at all. If you go forward any bit, the heels come up. So see that gap between the heels? So once that heel starts to lift, if I can put any kind of finger up underneath it, that's not good. Why that's not good? Because you're walking on your toes, or when you're exercising, you're doing squats, you're pushing off your toes versus your heels. If you push off your toes, you're making it more quad dominant again. Whenever you want hamstrings or glute emphasis, you want to push off your heels and not your toes. So when I'm designing programs for people, I want to make sure that when I'm designing these programs, I'm designing in a way that's going to benefit you in a way that doesn't hurt you or cause those impingements to get worse. So again, wrap up. If you squat and you can't, and you're able to do a primal squat, that means you got great range of motion in your hips and also your ankles. Now, if you go down and your heels starts to come up and you only can go down this low and your heels come up, that means we have some restrictions in your ankles or hips. So the second assessment is really to determine which one it is, or it could be both. Depending on how far this goes, determines whether you may have both. So if you can only go here and the heels come up, it's a combination of the ankles and the hips. But if you're able to go far here, that means we may have some hip restrictions. So it's a combination of different things. So at least it gives me a general idea of where to start. So that's my assessment when I assess clients that come in. Now, the assessments gets a little bit deeper as far as how strong one side is over the other side. And reason, again, why I talk about why I do these assessments, basically, as you get older, a lot of people I hear from clients and older clients, when your knee starts to hurt, oh, it's because of age, or because I play basketball, or your back start hurting, it's because I'm getting old. I have clients that's 60 years old, 70 years old. They don't have pain. Typically, when you have pain, that means you have some kind of imbalances in your body that needs to be addressed. So we need to figure out what's those imbalances and help to correct it. Again, there's no one particular exercise that fixes everything. I know a lot of people see videos where if you got certain issues with your body, do this stretch and it will help. Stretching is just one part of it. You have to have mobility. You have to have strength training, and you have to have stability training. All those are different things. So you got to focus on each individual one, and depending where your strengths, work on it. But you need all of them together. And before you do any of the exercise, make sure you get a clearance from the doctor that you're clear to do any exercise. So for everybody that thinks you can just go straight into the gym, I wouldn't advise that. Go get a proper assessment from somebody that's that been doing this or know how to properly assess somebody before you go into the gym. Because if you don't get properly assessed, the impingements that you have or imbalances, you can create more imbalances by going into gym. You ever felt like you went in the gym and you started working out and you had this stiffness or you had this pull on one side, and then it got worse as you start working out? Because you never addressed the issue of if you had any imbalances. And most people don't really know they have imbalance. They just feel like I'm losing my balance, or, I feel stronger more on one side. So before you get into any kind of weight program or training, get a clearance from your doctor first, and then go talk to a personal trainer that can properly assess you. That way they can help design a program that can start to work on those imbalances that you have. Remember, you got a knee problem. This ain't the root cause of your problem. It's a combination of different things. Weak glutes, weak core. Are you strengthening your ankles? Do you have ankle mobility? Do you have strength in your tibialis muscles? So there's a lot of different factors. You just a trial and error and see what's worked. What works for one person may not work for another person. So you just got to find that right combination. All right. Have any questions? You can reach me, leave a comment. I do virtual training. You can leave me a comment. I do have an Instagram page. My Instagram page is Baso Shelton. You feel free to go on there. You'll see I do a lot of functional training. I do a lot of strength and stability training as well. Mobility, anything you can think of, I do it on my page. So feel free. You can comment on my Instagram or you can comment on my YouTube channel. All right. Thank you. Have a good evening.